Right, exactly. Catch up with friends and family. Yeah. And so then you just like wait until later next month. I have to correct you by 8 o'clock.
Hello. This is your 2-minute warning. Let's say 3. This is your 3-minute warning. So we'll get started in about 3 minutes. So get beverages, use the bathroom. If you need to get comfy, we'll get started in about 3 minutes. watching on the live stream at home. Hello, people on the live stream. Hello, warm and toasty. We love you. All right. So welcome. This is the Blue Hour reading series put on by the Chicago Poetry Center. We want to start with our land and labor acknowledgements. Always do. We want to acknowledge that this event is being hosted on the unceded traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Manasak, and Fox, also called this area home. The region has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. Today, one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the United States resides right here in Chicago, continuing to contribute to the vitality of the city, to celebrate their heritage, practice traditions, and care for the land and waterways. We invite you to take this moment to acknowledge all who came before us, the Indigenous peoples displaced by colonization, as well as those who built this country through uncompensated, compulsory labor, those enslaved, and those oppressed. We honor all those who came before and those who continue to live on this land as we hold shared space for art and expression. So at the Chicago Poetry Center, we believe that poetry illuminates our individual and shared humanity, fueling thriving lives and healthy communities. Our mission is to connect people and poetry, equitably engage poets with communities, and foster creative literacy in the city and beyond. We envision and work to create a fair and verdant world rooted in artistic expression, human connection, and boundless imagination. Oh, for some reason this month, all these words have me choked up more than usual. So, forgiveness for all feelings tonight. There's lots of information about our many programs on the back table there, including our poetry residencies in Chicago Public Schools, our free resource for second graders, Queen Z's Poetic Adventures, our free citywide poetry calendar, so particularly if you're new to the area or new to engaging in live lit activities, you can check that out. It's totally free. If you run a reading series or anything like that, please reach out to us to get added to the calendar. There's also information about our program, Critical Conversations at Work, Anti-Racism. We recently got a grant from Healing Illinois to offer free Critical Conversations anti-racism programs online for anyone who wants to sign up. It was initially just for folks who volunteer and are staff members at nonprofits, but now it's open to anyone. So just pop on over to our website, poetrycenter.org, and sign up for those. Those are my announcements. Now we can get into the poetry stuff. So we're going to hear from 5 people in our open mic. We have a very crowded durian this evening, so I'm going to be pulling it directly from here. So be ready if you put your name in, and if you don't get called, then you're required to come back next month. I'm just kidding, but you are highly encouraged to do so. Please plan to read 1 poem or 3 minutes, whichever comes first. So if you have a 20-page epic about your lineage going back centuries, feel free to read 3 minutes of that. Okay? Great, 1 more 3 minutes. Also, want to encourage you all to self-care. Poetry does induce feelings, so if you need to take a step outside, get some water in the back, use the restroom, that sort of thing, please feel free to do so respectfully. All right, who's going to be first? First up, we have Hassam Zafar.
Do I introduce myself?
Sure, as long as it's within 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Hello, my name is Hassam Zafar. I go to North Park University. I'm an English major. This is a poem about shrinking to the size of a pea. Shrink to the size of a pea and see me for me. Shrunk to the battlefield of ants, open my eyes and see symphonies of the beetles and fleas, to ride at the crack of dawn on the backs of bumblebees, to saddle on the branches and to fly on the seeds, to wilt in the garden and to admire the trees, to veer off of a cliff and leap off of a leaf, to sit in an open wood and to tie the peas, to be invisible to man and oh to cry with glee, to be a friend to the ground and make the winds my enemies, to writhe in pain when the sun kisses, and let the moon bring me freeze. Accept the bigger, brighter, better world, so much more the eyes to see. To be free, to be free, to be free, if only I shrink to the size of a pea.
We were talking, there was a workshop that happens before this reading, and we were having a big discussion about some different like poetry, technological terms and things. That terminology is the word I'm looking for in this brain today. And we didn't get into that kind of the assonance of the E and the E and the E and the E, but I loved it. I loved it. All right, next up we have Moises Flores. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Stepping right in front of the iPad because for some reason it makes our live stream freeze. Again with the technologies. Okay, come on up.
Sorry.
Yep, there, oh, this is great.
Hello. So I wrote this poem last year. It's about a girl that I like at work. We work at the same hospital. It's called Turn It Off. It's been a few months now. I just see you in passing. I always make it a point to say hello. Something simple like, hey, how's it going? When on the inside, I want to say so much more. I have to turn it off because I want to pour out my very soul. I think you're the most beautiful girl that I know. Something beyond simplicity, like I dream of the day that you and I met and my life was forever changed. Seasons changing every leaf, not one spared or the same beyond relief. Like the lifespan of a caterpillar, emerging from the chrysalis, life ever changing to its most elegant existence. That's what I'd like to say, but I won't. I'll turn it off and cut it short. Let it show. I'll let you run through my head and build a place to call your own in my heart instead. But I'll turn it off and keep it to myself. It was nice to dream, but it wasn't meant to be. So, hey, dog.
Now there has to be an update, right? Like every Monday we come back and we're like, so, we shared a coffee. All right, next up we have Christy Odelius.
Planning to do this. I brought my students, so gosh, okay. All right, I think that I'm gonna read an older poem because I don't have like a lot of my new work on my phone. But this is a poem that I wrote when my son was a baby and I was a single mom. And I was struggling with postpartum depression. And I particularly was obsessed with the nights and the experience of the nighttime. So I wrote this poem during that time. Okay, and it's called Night Come to the Mother. And the idea of the mother for me was just sort of what my identity was before, had been kind of raised by this idea of the mother with a capital M. And so that's sort of an element of the poem too. Night, come to the mother, with green giraffes and towels, thermometer, briefcase, a slipper door. Tapestries of owls fold their wings over diamonds. Tepid water, hot jaw, blank blank in a jar. Night comes to the mother, a face bent by a calendar, a basement bedspread, counting wrenches. Night comes to the mother with eyes of red silk, a body still as years in a cupboard, body of volume and dials and grain. Night comes to the mother with inquiries and lies, 3 heads mistakens, shoo, brain pie, boy, cat-eye boy, lilac morning sky, boy. Thank you.
When a teacher has to make themselves vulnerable. I guess I have to read my work? Let's just read Shakespeare, okay? Yes. Right.
this was an assignment from Christy, and we were going to write about the memory and a color. And mine is called Yellow. Candle bloomingly burning, again without fear. Flourish the room, kiss all the faces of the people whom I come to love, the people with whom I share my life. Their eyes shimmer in the evening's dim light. My heart pounds with gratitude. And it was all yellow, fills the room, as freshly baked bread is being shared. This is what my life shall be made of. A daedalon that has found its place, a child no longer afraid. My yellow kitchen is again filled with love, but now the lasting kind. The daisies sing from the fragile vase. Life came to be again. Tonight the stars are shining just for me. In the morning sun I shall begin again. Cold, I made this, I made it.
All right, we have one more open micer before we get to our featured readers tonight. Trying to mix this up here. I feel like it's all been on this side of the room. Any of you open micers on this side of the room? Who knows? All right. Brianna, Grace, Hannah. Woo! This side's good. We've got a long way to go around, so you got to do a whole bunch of applauses. Yay! Okay, here we go. More applauses. Yay!
My heart's going a mile a minute.
You got it.
Content warning for discussions on suicide. Of Sarah Kane's 48 Psychosis, a critic said, "How on earth do you award aesthetic points to a 75-minute suicide note?" My hand slips. Crafts both a masterpiece and a noose. How ridiculous. For two things to exist independently of each other, all while sharing a mother. How startling. Both still name me artist. God forbid the last thing I birth be beautiful. God forbid my last words swaddled in the honesty that I taught them. You know, they say the best writing advice is to kill your darlings. So I did. Do not tell me I didn't love this body as much as I detested being unable to love it better. A man will one day call my art a suicide note because I had the audacity to be honest about pain and was too exhausted to put up with it. Stitched me Medea with no nouns for his own transgressions, my suffering labeled pornographic, when all it ever wanted to do was exist plainly. Sorry, I forgot my lines. It is my fault that this raw is so gorgeous, its circumstances drown out any skill I poured into it. Go ahead. Name my pain in every way I did my best to void. Your tongue, forming around the circumference of tragedy and thinking it is the only measurement needed, neglecting the fact that every tragedy is an infinity. Her last words on the page were these: "Please open the curtain. Do not ignore this advice. Note how my poem still reaches you from beyond my grave, a literary resurrection, the kindest form of necromancy. Call all of my magic witchcraft, see none of it, and know still this is a seance. It is why we call it spelling. Open the curtain. Find my body of work and a planchette. Call me forth into this future beside you. I am alive again every time we share words. It is all the word I need.
Now it is time for our featured readers. We have two features tonight, as we always do. We're going to hear first from Elizabeth Strauss Friedman and then from Faisal Mohyuddin. I've been practicing, my friend. I've really been practicing with your last name. I'm really excited to hear both of these poets tonight. As those of you who come to this thing know, have heard me say, there's not a specific algorithm we use to make sure we get just the right combinations, because chance does the work for us in terms of people coming together and the ways that their work overlaps and friction with each other. But when I was thinking about these two poets and their work, I was thinking today about how these are poets of the everyday, the observed world. But by poeming that world, they sort of reveal to us or invite us to see what's underneath it, right? Nothing is ever exactly what it seems in any of the poems you're about to hear. Despite them being full of things of this world, dictionaries and bodies and weights and war and seeds and noise. And these poems really remind me, and I think invite us, listen really closely, to look really closely, because by doing that we get to hear what's underneath and see what's underneath. So I'm going to invite you to do that over the next little while. We're going to start by hearing from Elizabeth. Elizabeth Strauss Friedman is the author of the poetry books The Lost Positive, The Eggshell Skull Rule, and the prose poetry chapbook Gathered Bones Are Known to Wander. Her poetry has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. Her work has appeared in Pleiades, I never know how to pronounce that magazine, Pleiades, Worsted Moth, The Rumpus, and others. Her work can be found at elizabethstraussfriedman.com. Big, big Blue Hour applauses for Elizabeth.
Thank you so much to the Chicago Poetry Center, Blue Hour Reading Series, Marty McConnell, who does so much great for this series, Faisal, excuse me, for being featured reader, and for all of those who stood up and gave their poetry work. It was amazing. So thank you. I'm going to start with a few poems from my newest book, The Lost Positive. And I want to just talk about what a lost positive is. A lost positive in English is a word that is no longer used in its positive form in the vernacular, but the negative form is still used. So for example, inept. We call people inept sometimes, whether we should or not is a different story, but we tend not to say ept, uncouth, right? There are many, many, many of them throughout the language. And this is a book of poetry about the constellations in the sky and the ways in which their misogynistic myths have helped to make women the lost positives of the universe. And I will start with a poem about Medea, that was mentioned earlier. This is about the Puppis constellation, the stern of Argo Navis. It's a ship that her husband Jason and the Argonauts rowed to find Golden Fleece in mythology. And she went with them with her 2 sons and Jason's 2 sons. This is Medea's side of the story. He asked me to steer, it's called Medea Was Fleeced. He asked me to steer a rickety ship in search of Golden Fleece, Medea tells her therapist, listlessly. So I did. Dropped everything for Jason. Traded my family for him, all in search of fabric from a winged golden ram guarded by a dragon. The man lives fantasy world. Meanwhile, I cooked casseroles for the artists. Not that they thanked me. Their swords caught the corners of the kitchen I just repainted. Nicks everywhere. Have you any idea how much time it takes to gloss wainscoting? 3 coats? And all that laundry? Do you know that wool tunics need to be hand washed and line dried? To say nothing of the sons I raised alone. Homework piled in the dining room where we entertain. Soccer balls and cleats littering the mudroom. Week-old snacks trapped behind their headboards. And for what? He left me for King Crayon's daughter. Left me a ruined woman. A hag with no money and his kids. So yes, I killed them. And Crayon. And his miserable daughter. What choice did he leave me? I've been relegated to hell. Include that in my commitment hearing. This is a poem about the Andromeda constellation. Not to go too deep into the myth, I'll just say that Andromeda's father, Cepheus, was told by an oracle that the only way to save his kingdom was to sacrifice his daughter, of course. So he chained her to a rock by the sea, and she was then saved by another woman, Perseus. I'm sorry, another man. So Rapunzel and Gloria Steinem have a baby. She's the glow after, the morning after, night paint self alive. Only a man could see a vagina, a chain, in the distorted graph of this unsolved math equation. Something cherished, precious, a button, a young button, negotiating raptorcraft, perceived power. No. She offers a fundamental commodity empty of envy, her labor. Cold and unconcerned, intently indifferent to the irons, none of them light her way. She will not die in want of daylight. 1,400 times the size of the full moon, airfoils dimpled metal twigs, the interwoven stomach muscles of a childless woman. She's wires tied to snowflakes of light, a flashing cluster screaming to be left alone. Not all of the constellations are just myths about men saving women, sacrificing women, and so on. Some of them are also men who looked up in the sky and said, "Look, a clock." This one is the Horologium constellation, or the pendulum clock constellation, and it's titled Perched. When I die, I want to be made into art and mailed to those who would not. I'll sit swirled into glass paperweights, the gravity of my loss in your sightline, as I anchor what you work to avoid. I'll sit pretty as a monument to your failures. Sit pretty as you sit restless. I am test results that will not be ignored. Symptoms of me will persist. Okay, another one from this book. This is about the dragon constellation, Draco. And the dragon is named Ladon, and his job is to guard the Garden of Hesperides. Because the Garden of Hesperides is a bunch of half-naked women who are clearly not to be trusted, and they need to be watched. And the title of this poem is Writing Up His Misdeeds for Human Resources. Daughters of the Evening, they're called, minor goddesses of night. Maybe 4, maybe 7. It's easy to lose count of nymphs with no relief of passing hours, who prance Garden of Hesperides topless in the evening sun, so predisposed to sin. Artisans of all goods uncherished, crowns, gossip, loose things that live outside the holy and hallowed. And don't forget the forbidden fruit. History and myth love leaving ladies by apples. Garden's lousy temptation, the weaker sex won't resist. The fruit of the short-sighted, silly. Romping sprites absent of agency in a profusion of produce. I picture Ladon, 100-headed dragon, guarding the apples the women so covet, never trust women, never eat apples, a centipede of looming violence, bad breath in 100 mouths, 200 leering eyes. All right, one more little poem from this book. This is about the Swan constellation, Cygnus constellation. This is about Zeus, who loved this pretty princess named Leda, married to a mortal man. And Zeus decided that he would have her no matter what. She didn't want him, but he's a god, he can do what he wants, he thinks. So he transforms himself into a swan and seduces her. He rapes her. It's called Debonair in the Dead Air. And this is from the perspective of Leda. It's set to go south, this ancestry, this bearing, these generations born of my betrayal. Zeus seduced, I lie lacking. Laid by swan, I lay eggs, lay blame. A flock of flying swans, a wedge, a flock of me, a wanting. My people's womb, a wedge issue. Which of my offspring spring from Zeus immortal, and which from my mortal husband? No probe of me reveals such mystery. Me, mere vessel. Okay, a few poems from this book I wrote called The Eggshell Skull Rule. So my husband and I got married the night before he started law school 8 years ago. Don't do that. And he was so stressed with a new marriage and law school, and his father was dying. He would talk about the law in his sleep. And this was right before the internet. This was 96. So I would get up because I couldn't sleep with him talking, and I would look up things in his law books. And when he was studying tort law, damages, there was this rule he was talking about called the eggshell skull rule, and I looked it up, and here's what it is. Guy's driving down the street. He accidentally taps the bumper of the car in front. The guy in that car gets a fractured skull because he has what is medically termed an eggshell skull, a very thin skull. The man who is hit sues the man who hit him for medical expenses. The man who says, I shouldn't have to pay you anything. Any other person would not have had an injury. You can leave a mark on your bumper. And what the judge found in the case, which became the heart of the eggshell skull rule, is you take your victim as you find them and are responsible for all injuries regardless of intent. So there's no reasonable standard for how thick a skull should be. If the person you hit gets a fractured skull, you pay for that. If you hit no harm, no foul, okay. But it's about the individual. It's not about what we expect people should be like. So I wrote a book of poetry about this tort law, which is funny, because if you do a Venn diagram of poetry and tort law, there's 4 people in there, but they love this book. So this is a book about how we do and do not successfully apply this doctrine in tort law to familial relationships. And the first poem is called The Eggshell Skull Rule. I am as you find me, riddle maddening and impossible. Magic begins in soil, desperate for rain. Locks against external danger hide internal injuries. Upon entrance, you own them all. Do you need a narrator for next steps? Love is never that kind, or any kind besides an unknowable underneath. A subsurface city of ant tunnels. We carry loads larger than ourselves to build shelter from danger, and are responsible for the collapse of civilizations forged by the small as the strong. For every passageway leads to potential and to poison. We drink what we can, reaching and grateful. Okay. This is called Splintered Objects Resist Classification. It's a movable city, transplanted. Mother uprooted it often, watered it bloody, traced its cracks with twigs, mapped to a tree split by lightning, a rivulet run dry. So name me where I lie, stitch me like a soldier to the land I protect. Love me like tumbled glass worn by oceans I'll never travel. Swallow me, an incurable habit. Plant me by a will half shaded in doubt, half lit by the taste of growling beauty, all its precise delusion. Somewhere, a dusty museum holds a shelf I'm meant to crouch upon, to cradle my ancient ruins for future. I'll do one more from this book, and then we can get to something a little lighter. This one's called What I Would Salvage in a Fire. I'd lay hands on the mistakes I haven't made, the state mind-numbing jobs I've hoarded, and the mean thoughts I keep to myself. I'd haul the weighty photos of family gatherings, gritty sandpaper, and salt water soaked in heaving, throaty secrets, couched in vacant glances that lie like parking lots between the eyes, and cradle them while stumbling out of the smoke. And the red sweater you bought me when you didn't know I'm not a candy girl. I've earned the right to burn them all myself. There's an economy of words that feels wrong here, and too much to rescue I can't reach. There is always more ink than the skin suggests. Okay, and finally, I'll read a few poems to you from my chapbook, Gathered Bones Are Known to Wander. It's a prose poetry chapbook with just little prose poems. I wrote it in 2016 during that year's Republican primary. And there were 16 or so people running for the primary. Every one of them, in one way or another, said publicly that God had told them to run for president. And I thought, God's fucking with most of you. But the way they talked about it was mostly, God spoke to me, God came to me in a dream. I thought, God, whatever that being or force is, talks to you in the most boring of ways that anyone can think of. Sure. So I started to think, what are some of the ways that God's dealing with us, or the universe is dealing with us? And one thing I was sure, and I cannot tell you why, but I was sure God has a secretary, because just a lot of work to be done. But I pictured this secretary being a woman who doesn't always show up to work, and mostly it's because she's getting plastic surgery. And you start to ask yourself, like, couldn't God just fix that? Couldn't she be like, hey, this nose, let's talk, right? But no, she's always healing. Her name is Lucy. So when she comes up, you'll know one back. Okay, this first one is called God Marks His Agenda's Draft. Each evening, God emails me my next day's agenda, always marked draft. 3 or 4 revisions or addenda appear in my inbox before midnight. When I wake in the morning, I print out the final version and go about my day. On rare occasions, an update appears mid-morning. When it does, it always includes something I was supposed to do earlier but hadn't, spelled out in bold block letters. At night, I check the news reports and find stories of car crashes and shootings, and I wonder by the agenda earlier if any of these tragedies might have been avoided. I ask to see my neighbors' agendas, and they are always identical to mine. Okay, this one's called The Evils of Surveillance. My phone rang, but the caller ID came up blank, so I let it go to voicemail. God's secretary left me a message reminding me that God watches me every Thursday between 3 and 4 p.m. And that last week he was dispirited by what he witnessed. I looked at my calendar to figure out where I'd been between 3 and 4 the Thursday prior, and was reminded that I attended a family baseball game in Lincoln Park. You were up to bat, you'd earned 2 strikes, and were about to lose the game for our team. I pushed you aside, grabbed the bat, and hit the ball out of the park. A scout in the bleachers drafted me into a better league. Thank you. flyer. She finally emerged from her cocoon at a candlelight vigil for her missing child. Most of the community did not attend, but looted the local market instead. Lucy stood at the end of her cul-de-sac, fingering a crescent moon bulge of gauze affixed high atop her forehead, then went back inside to lie down. What's she gonna do? She's not God. Stop everyone. Okay, this is called dangerously low dogma levels. According to your doctor, your blood tests revealed dangerously low dogma levels. You sold me rights to our dog. You stopped giving money to Kenny, the homeless man on the corner. You erased my Kindle. The doctor prescribed an allergy pill, but failed to mention its side effects, including a misrepresentation of rap music, a persecution complex, delusions of grandeur, and a disdain for recycling. Marty, do I have time for 2 more little ones?
2 more little ones, good.
Okay. The exhibit to our future. I return to find our home a museum, and you selling tickets by the entrance. Dozens of people who look familiar are lined up along our front walk, checking their watches. Admission to our past costs visitors $15 and consists of a tour of nicked walls and broken doors where objects and fists were flung. Tickets to our present are set at $12, a circuit through silent rooms with perfectly made and tea vases holding tiny flowers in bloom. The exhibit to our future is not open to the public. Last one here, I laid out your psyche on the coffee table. I laid out your psyche on the coffee table, the pieces scattered about. Knowing how easily you veer into rages, I ignored your id and collected your superego, which had taken it upon himself to begin rearranging our living room and alphabetizing your record collection. I fused the superego with your ego, which had broken in half, not realizing that your id had started a fire in the kitchen while attempting to cook chocolate pancakes marinated in bourbon. Soon the house was on fire. There was no way out. Thank you.
So many applause for Elizabeth Strauss Friedman. Not doing well at this microphone adjustment tonight. Lefty boosty, righty. Oh, there we go. Grand. Okay. Woo, baby. All right. Next up for our second feature, we have Faisal Mohyuddin. Yes. I read your name like every day of my Instagram feed, and I've mispronounced it for a million years. So this is exciting. So Faisal is the author of Elsewhere and Elegy and the Displaced Children of Displaced Children and of the Chapel of Longing. He teaches high school English in suburban Chicago and creative writing at Northwestern University School of Professional Studies. He is a visual artist and serves as a master practitioner with the global not-for-profit Narrative 4. So tiny trivia is that Faisal also used to work with my senior prom date. So there we go. There you go, a little bit of trivia for you. Please make many applauses for Faisal Mohyuddin. All the way around, we got applause for all of you.
A former colleague of mine was my principal, who was the principal of the high school, where I still am and where Elizabeth, you're an alum of that high school. So like very small world here. So thank you, Marty, so much. Thank you, Chicago Poetry Center. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you all you who are here. And I didn't catch your name, but thank you. I've done a few readings where there are people doing sign interpretation. I'm always blown away because the speed at which you need, I can't do that just with the language, just with my own sometimes. So I actually had my book launch for my recent book here in this room in April, and so I'm just like, I feel a lot of love in this room, and I've been here many times, and I love this space, and I love what Haymarket House is about, what Haymarket Books is about. And I'm going to read one poem to start from this book. This is from 2018, The Displaced Children of Displaced Children, and then I'll read some from elsewhere, the newer one, and then I'll read some haiku, and then I'll close with something from here. So one thing I think it's important for me to share about my work is that I am the child of immigrants from Pakistan. Both my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family were in India before the partition of 1947, very close to the border, and they migrated as refugees into Pakistan and started a new life that I don't know about because people did not talk about it, they still don't talk about it. So I grew up with a lot of silence and a lot of silence trauma that I didn't myself experience, but I think the weight of it still kind of lingers over everything that I do. Every experience I have is kind of shaped by that. My wife is also from Pakistan, but from a different part of the country, and we talk about the different ways in which we grew up. Like she didn't have a lot. She knows a lot of her family stories, and one thing I always wanted to like talk to my dad more. Like my grandparents were far away, but my dad, I had like one conversation with him like right before he passed away 10 years ago. It kind of opened a world of his childhood to me that I feel like it was a gift to have that conversation, but this like lifelong regret of like, man, I was such a coward to not have approached him sooner. But I knew that if I talked to him, it would reawaken some pain that he was trying to push to the side. I also learned that he lost his dad when he was very young. And I found out in that conversation that his dad had been murdered by people that never were prosecuted. There's no sense of justice, and so he grew up at fatherless at 13 or 14. So the opening poem in this book is called The Opening, and the title comes from the opening chapter of the Quran, which is called Al-Fatiha, which means the opening. And so I wanted to start the book kind of in that tradition. And in the Quran, the opening Al-Fatiha is like a prayer for guidance, and then the rest of the Quran is that guidance. And it's an imagined conversation between father and child. The opening. The child. Tell me, Father, what new turbulence took hold in your blood on the day of my birth? And did your stomach sink each time I cried out for the basket of your arms? The Father. I held you too close to feel anything but the wild gallop of your tiny heart. The child. Did you recite the call to prayer in my ear? Slip your pinky dipped in honey in my mouth to mark with song and sweetness my entry into the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Father. All night I nursed a candle's flame, leaning in and out its sphere of light, mumbling verses from the Quran, mispronouncing the Arabic, not understanding a word beyond Al-Fatiha, the opening. Nonetheless, I had fulfilled this first creation of fatherhood. The child. What was it like to look into my eyes for the first time? The Father. I felt as if my fingers had combed the embryonic silt feathering the deepest bottom of the ocean. And when I resurfaced, holding the key to fatherhood, I understood the true worth of being a living thing. The child. What did you say to mother when she could not find the words to tell you about how the breaking open of a body propels one toward heaven? that God promises the greatest share of paradise to mothers. The Father. After a long silence, I said, to every unutterable thing buried in your heart, to every miraculous truth teetering on the tip of your tongue, yes, yes, Amen. The child, did you spill the blood of 2 goats, give their meat to the poor, to bless my arrival, to mark the transition of my soul from the library of the eternal into the living fire of a body too fragile to share? The Father, for 20 years, I harvested the silhouette of my Father's voice from the night sky. Let its echo run to sleep whenever I felt so crushed by heartache that even God's infinite love, a rescue vessel sailing through a history of bloodshed and loss, could not hold me intact enough to believe in survival. So if it was my hand or another's that guided the blade along 2 throats, I cannot recall nor do want to. The child, what else might you have done had fatherhood not stolen you from the life you had known? The Father, when a surgeon saves your life by amputating a limb housing a reservoir of poison, you do not curse the violence of their work, nor the pain of the procedure. You bow down before God. You thank the doctor. You learn to write with the other hand, to walk on one leg. The child, one final question, Father. What did I say when my son, when I too have become a father, asks me about the hours of your life that exist my knowing? The Father, tell him more about the hours of your life, so his hunger is not as desperate nor as bottomless as ours. So I feel like that desire to write has been to fill in the silences. And so this book is a grief sequence. It's a shorter collection, and there's these cycles of poems. One 5-part cycle is a dream sequence. And so I'll read the dream sequence. It is called An End to Captivity. And one of the stories behind this poem is that my son was born in December 2014, and my dad passed away early May 2015. My son was like 4.5 months old. And I remember thinking of I've just become a father, and I was expecting and hoping to have all these experiences with my dad. I never knew my grandfather, so the fact that my son lost his was really, really painful. And so the dream sequence is kind of like that one, where there's this imagined sense of being that is there. So, an end to captivity. 1. If I go walking through dawn's dewy shadows toward the river where the carp bursts through the gleaming muck to belch air, and there in the echoes I catch the wordless voice of my dead father, then should the unexpected gift of my child's embraces awaiting my return be like a key. 2. Lies beneath this wreckage of loss, the solace of my father's songs, another lost geography never meant for me. Quietly, I ease my son back to bed, promise him a toy truck, a rocket ride to an imagined country in some unexplored corner of the galaxy, whatever he wants in this age of unlimited wonder. If he would just fold himself back into a warm pocket of sleep. Next to him, I sit, listening backwards through his soft wheezing, wondering at the hours my father spent like this, my body beside his, a collection of tiny years, his own father's body reduced to riddles, the light of day, the only thing that loosened the strangle of one by granting him another chance, not to grieve, to give. 3. Every day the child asks the same question: when will I be older too? The answer, a rising flood of worries, without a tongue to taste the perfect quiet, to protest the loneliness, to barter with God, to implore him to trade this half-lit exile looming in the wake of loss for the fragrance of the last remaining blossom of that long ago abandoned tree I imagined my grandfather planted to mark my father's birth, to bless his future with an abundance of dutiful children and an exultation of songbirds to forever keep the living afloat. 4. Within a door locked, behind it, distance of a skylark waiting to be slaughtered. My son knows nothing yet of this nightly searching for songs. Secrets do not torment his wonders yet. To devour the bird's wings is to taste the night sky in summer, is to commune with the bleakness of every breathing body, is to kneel without complaint before the wintering touch of a child's eagerness to become older, their impossible wish for deathless tomorrows. And 5, an invented memory. Your father, on the other side of the glass, gazing into your newborn eyes, discovering within their wild brightness the first verses of devotion. And you, held in your mother's arms, wincing as that first burst of light severs from body, as rivers of breath pour freely from your lungs. And paradise, again, it lies beneath your feet. For fathers, though, a myth and a mirror, a stopping place for grief, and elsewhere for the helpless, where your child goes to find you when you have left too, and left them in a world overrun by absences. I'm going to do a transition to some, I know Marty had mentioned Instagram, and so after October 7th, it was an extremely difficult time. It's been a really difficult time for many people. Given that I'm a public high school teacher, like I've been told you can't go there, don't about it, don't talk about it, and I put a little thing out there on social media, and I got in big trouble. I got in big trouble. So, and the request was you can't go there, and I said my entire life has been about people not going there. And I said, I'm going to go there. And going there is bearing witness. And so I pondered and I take the metro. I have a long commute from Oak Park up with to Highland Park where I work. And on November 1st of 2023, I was like, I need to write something. And so I'm like, what's the tiniest thing I can do? It's a haiku. So it's like 575. I took that approach. And I was like, whatever happens, happens. This is my 23rd year at my school, so luckily I've been doing a lot of writing and I've gotten a lot of support, but it has come at many, many costs. And so I'll read the first few and then I'll read like a 10-part prayer sequence and I'll end it with a final poem after that. So the first one I wrote, this is November 1st, 2020, and it's watching kind of what was happening in Gaza. To kill with such ease, you must first murder your own soul. Is it worth it? Each next bomb you drop kills another universe of innocence, yours. Children beg to be seen, beg spared, yet are killed and killed and killed. And so I was writing, I've written hundreds and hundreds of them, and they have, made their way to all these places, and I have felt like more free because of these. They're tiny. People have been very bothered by them as well, and I know that, and I feel like I'm not negating anyone else's experience, but I need to speak what I need to say. This is a 10-part prayer sequence. I may read something after this, but I may end with it. I think I'm going to end with this. This is each haiku was called ceasefire haiku, and then I was in a lot of conversations with people, and like, ceasefire is not like the goal. The goal is liberation. It's a free Gaza, free Palestine. And so this one was, thank you, was called ceasefire haiku, but I feel like as I'm representing them, I'm calling them liberation haiku. It's a 10-part sequence. And this came out in diode, which I really love and appreciate. 1. Pray for those who plant seeds in the rubble, who spurn despair as they're slain. 2. Pray for the young who've learned to translate rage into might, grief into light. 3. Pray for the elders whose blood holds a history blessed by fearlessness. 4. Pray for the storytellers who sharpened voices, cut through lies, free hope. 5. Pray for the newborns left to die. They too beheld this savage frailty. 6. Pray for the ones held captive for months, for years. Free them all, the land too. 7. Pray for the distant witnesses. May they always fight for justice, peace. 8. Pray for the villains too, that their dead hearts might house some buds of mercy. 9. Pray for the dead, God's children martyred. Ask them for forgiveness, ours, yours. And 10. O Lord, bless us with bigger hearts, vast enough to hold grief and virtue. Thank you so much.
Of our features tonight. I don't know about all of you, but I am like walking the line of despair a lot of times these days. I am so grateful to you all for being here tonight. Like this person here, I'm willing to do this, like we're okay. Right? We're okay for right now. So, just very grateful for that. Okay, I have announcements. There's going to be books for sale in the back. Faisal, did you bring books to sell? Okay, good. And Elizabeth has books to sell. They're in the back. Let's do this thing where we give each other money for art. Let's do that. Yes. This is how we do the system right now. Okay, so there are books for sale in the back. There is also wine and beer and water. Please hang out. Please talk to each other. Introverts, we can do it. We can talk to other people. I promise you. Oh, we can make it. Big thanks to the Poetry staff, to our volunteer Chris back at the table, our amazing interpreter Gabby. Please make sure to sign up for the message if you're not already on it. We are here every Wednesday of the month, and stay warm, stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.